Welcome to another edition of SteelCast. Unlike the last couple of editions where we've been on the Talbot site following the progress of the electric arc furnace and the development of the hot mill and pickle line to decarbonise the UK steel industry, today we're looking at the other end of the supply chain, the sharp end where our products are being put into use. And we're here in London at the Building Centre, where today Catnic, which is an enterprise within Tata Steel, is launching a product called SolarSeam. And we're going to find all about it in the duration of this podcast and talking to people from academia, from business, architects, and from within Catnic itself. Fundamentally, SolarSeam is a photovoltaic bonded coating that goes onto the standing seam roof system that Building Systems within Tata Steel has had for a number of years. And today's event has come to London. I guess it's home for lots of specifiers and architects. There's presentations, there's a panel discussion. We've got someone from the UK government joining us today. And of course, we've got speakers from Tata Steel and from Catnic. So without further ado, let's have a look inside, see who's there and see who we can talk to. I don't know if it's coincidence that it's all branded orange, Catnic orange, but this is within the building centre now. 80% of the buildings we'll use in 2050 have already been built. I'm sure there will be some discussions later about retrofit rather than new build for this product SolarSeam to put onto housing, potentially social housing as well. It's a topic I want to discuss with the government. And we've got Dave Worsley from Swansea University talking about buildings as power stations. Is there an opportunity to use things like photovoltaic technology to generate energy to alleviate energy poverty in social housing? Is that an opportunity? Hopefully someone will talk to us about that today. So we've come down into the basement of the building centre here in London, and the first person I bumped into, old colleague of mine, Dave Hanson. Dave, you're now Managing Director of Catnic. Big day today.
Very exciting, Tim, really exciting. We've been pushing this product for a while now, and it's finally good to get it launched to the market.
Yeah, and here in the centre of London, why have you chosen London to hold this launch event rather than having it on a steelworks site?
Yeah, well, as you can see, the building centre is where we're at, and it's a really impressive place, very focused on construction, which fits with what we're trying to promote. Also, the sort of audience we're trying to get to, a lot of them are based in London, so ideal to choose London to do this launch.
Yeah, and this place does scream innovation. It screams construction centre. You've got lots of big players who've got displays here and stuff. Talk to me a little bit about the sort of people you've invited to come along today.
So you know, it's all sorts of people. It's potential installers of the product. It's people that will specify the product. It's key influencers in government as well. So, you know, we had to make sure it wasn't just a sales pitch. So we're trying to educate people about the importance of rooftop solar, but also at the same time make sure that we get some interest in the product as well. And you know, social media is going to have an important part to play in this as well. You know, lots of people will see us talking about this on social media, and that will hopefully get some attention as well.
Yeah, so outside the building, I did a very poor job in trying to describe the product that you're launching today. Catnic SolarSeam, very simple terms, tell us what it is.
Okay, so basically the Catnic Urban product, which is a product we've been selling now for a number of years, is a metal standing seam roof, very, very innovative, very contemporary, very attractive to house owners. What was missing from that was the solar option. So by working together with our chosen partner, BIPV we now integrate that solar onto our roof. We do that in a factory in Shotton, on our main site in Shotton, and then once that solar is bonded to the metal roof, we supply that to the homeowner and is erected on the building, and then they have a fully integrated photovoltaic solution with metal standing roof.
Yeah, and I can concur about the beauty of the product solution. We went down to West Wales and filmed a house down there which has installed it already, and in fact the homeowner's here somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll try and catch up with Geraint later. It's a fantastic looking system, and as you say, very innovative. But people will say, listen, solar panels have been around for ages, why is this any different?
I think because if you look at it, and hopefully you'll get some pictures of it, it's a very attractive solution. A lot of the photovoltaic solutions that you see on roofs, they stand out, they look ugly. the integrated solution that we've got, you can hardly see it's there, but it's performing and delivering renewable electricity. So I think a very contemporary solution, does the job, but is hardly noticeable when it's on the roof.
Yeah, and we'll try and pick up someone later who could talk us through the technology behind it, because the technology is different as well, and it's highly advanced. But listen, I can't keep you much longer because I know you're about to open the session in a few minutes, but thanks very much for joining us. We'll try and catch some more people as we go through the day, and then maybe at the end of the day we'll catch up and get your thoughts on how it went.
Thanks very much, Tim.
Nice one.
Cheers.
Thank you, Dave. And I think just over there, so we're going to grab some people. I think over here, see the householder of our house. Geraint, hi. Nice to see you again. Listen, I've just been talking to Dave Hanson, the Managing Director of Catnic, and I was talking to him about our visit to your house. Geraint, you own a house down in West Wales. You have had this SolarSeam system on your house now for a little bit. How are you finding it?
Well, I can tell you that the data speaks for itself. The house has generated over 6 megawatt hours of energy since we've installed it. And it's, because we're in the national park, it's visually appealing, and it's not typical of a solar installation. So it's very kind of low key.
Yeah.
And we're just getting great performance out of it.
Yeah, and Dave Hanson was talking about the aesthetics of it and saying it's much more attractive to look at. You can hardly notice you've got solar panels on your roof. But I remember when we came down to visit, you were saying that you also got the advantage, you don't worry about the winds, because with panels you can worry about the winds, is that right? Yeah,
so the fact that the solar panels are integrated into the roof means that we don't get, and we get very strong winds there. Yes. So we're not concerned that the bonding is going to give, but also we're not concerned that wind is going to get underneath traditional panels and potentially cause an issue, because the winds can get up to hurricane speed there.
Yeah, they can, yeah. And I know that there'll be interesting in the discussion today to talk about whether this product is best for new build or retrofit. You kind of fit somewhere in the middle because you had an existing house, you put an extension, so I don't know if that's classed as retrofit or not. But in terms of putting that new product onto an existing house, how did you and your builders find it?
We thought it pretty straightforward. Obviously they measured the roof ahead of time so to get the right size panel bonded onto the sheets. And it's a new build for us because that's part of our extension on our property, and we found it pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And I guess people listening to this podcast, either in the trade or as consumers, might treat your review a bit like TripAdvisor and say, look, you've got this product, you've been there, you've done it. How would you rate it? How would you recommend it for other people, either in local authorities or as consumers or as politicians looking for public procurement?
Well, so I think first of all is to say that if you didn't know it was a solar roof, it's so low key on the property. So from that perspective, it's very good for the area. Secondly, we found the whole installation process. It's like installing a standing steam roof. Yeah. So there's no difference in that respect, and we found that it's been first class.
Yeah. Excellent. Listen, what's brought you here today? Are you looking for the next on solution, or are you just sort of taking part as a sort of participant?
Well, I'm keen in solar energy anyway, so I'm looking at what are the next developments in PV arrays and in solar installation. Yeah. And also I'm quite interested in what Catnic's doing.
Yeah. Listen, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much again for welcoming us to your house a few weeks ago to see. It's an amazing place, and delighted to see you at the event today, and hopefully catch up with you later.
Great. Yeah, nice to see you again, Tim.
Thank you. So we've just taken a break after the first session of the launch of the Catnic SolarSeam product. Dave Hanson, Managing Director of Catnic, who we spoke to earlier, opened the session and quickly passed on to actually one of the panellists and the representative of government, a guy called Tim Rutter, who's from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, who did an opening address and then joined the panel. What I want to do now is to try and talk to some of those panellists to talk about what was involved in that discussion, which actually focus on solar energy in the UK rather than the specific products that support it. And I can see over here is Kamal Rajput, our own Cam Rajput, who hosted that panel. So I'm going to see if I can interrupt him and have a chat to him now. Great to see you again, Cam.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Friend of the podcast. Cam, you just hosted a great panel session that maybe some of us were expecting was going to be about the product and the technology of PV solar, but actually you raised it up a level, you took the role of thought leadership in solar energy for the UK. Tell us what were the big themes that you thought came out of that panel session?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I think the biggest theme for me was what the role of the UK supply chain is going to take and should take when we deploy solar within the residential landscape. I think it's really clear that government have made a strong push for economic growth, which we as industry fully support. But then policy needs to support that, otherwise we're going to risk what's happened in other renewable sectors where we import material from other parts of the world, which is what government don't want, and neither does UK suppliers.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to Tim Warren from the government a bit later when we can catch him, but there was a lot of focus on not necessarily the technology of PV, but the difficulties with planning and government policy and public procurement and linking with the network and the systems and where solar can be built. That must be quite overwhelming for the government, and also the Solar Task Force, which I believe you're part of.
Yeah, so I was a member of the Supply Chain and Innovations subgroup within the task force. No, you're absolutely right. All of those things play a role, and they are difficult. And I think it's that ecosystem piece. I know we discussed this in previous podcasts, how important that is. But I think what was quite profound in the discussions that we had today was the direct correlation between a policy measure and what that means to a company, a producer, a supplier, and how those are so inherently linked. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important for stakeholders in the room and for others listening to the podcast to be aware of as well.
Yeah, because I think there's a danger for companies like Tata Steel to say, listen, there's a demand out there, or we'd like to grow that demand, but we make a product and we will sell it to a customer, and we are changing that perspective. We're trying to influence government. We are working with people in the supply chain. And so Daniel Pillay, we're also going to try and catch up with as a product supplier. But there was this definitely like a feeling of a desire to collaborate for a common purpose, maybe?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. We cannot underestimate how important a role we as supply chain and as a producer, as a manufacturer will play in changing what I would call this sort of cultural change, this cultural mindset around solar, around the aesthetics of solar within rooftop. We've got a fantastic product in Catnic SolarSeam that we're talking about today. Yeah. Changing people's perception, changing mindset, changing attitude. It should not just be us saying that's government's role or the industry, but we are the industry. We have a role to play to change that attitude. And Tim referenced a media piece in the news or advertisements. That is really, really important because there are pockets of industry, particularly like the Catnic SolarSeam product, which is it's a B2C product. Yeah. A consumer has to be aware of it. Yeah. So that's really important, as well as the more holistic discussion we're having with government and wider industry about the grid reform and the deployment of these things.
Yeah, and I know we could do probably a whole podcast on this topic, and I don't know whether that panel discussion will be shared and broadcast because there was such a lot of information. But if we come back to Tata Steel, you and I, both embedded in the organisation, love the organisation, and probably both of us in a world where we're saying, how do we change people's perception of our industry from heavy manufacturing industry to technology to provider? But you're now saying, yeah, but how do you change that from being a technology provider to being part of the solar sector?
Yeah. If I can be critical for a few moments of our own organisation, we're a steel company, we're a large steel company, and we focus on the product that we are producing in the facilities today. We don't necessarily do it as well as we could do, focus on where that then ends up and the industry and the sector that product goes into. Events like today really help us articulate a product that we produce in Port Talbot, processed in Shotton, is then ends up in someone's roof or on a commercial building, and how we are part of that sector, and it's changing that mindset. So I think that through value chain, that through supply chain, that through industry piece, that is really, really important, and we've got to do a huge amount more in that space.
Yeah, and I am going to try and find some other panellists because I could talk to you all day about it. But before I let you go, Cam, firstly, brilliantly facilitated. I thought you kept everyone involved and on topic. But come back to Tata Steel. People within the company will say, well, Tata Steel, we supply the automotive sector, we supply the packaging sector, we supply the offshore sector and the engineering sector. Probably not yet saying solar or renewable energy. How big could that be for Tata Steel in the UK?
It could be significant. Today's event was talking around residential landscape. If I just pivot ever slightly towards the ground mount sector or for solar, in order to deliver government's targets, we're going by 2035, we're going to need anywhere between 1.5 and 2 million tons. And it's those sorts of numbers that steel producers and our senior leadership team within the board recognise, well, that's large volumes. Yeah. And that is just for UK, and that is just for the existing targets. Yeah. That doesn't include future targets, and does it even include the debate, what we call repowering, where products that we've installed 10 years ago have actually fulfilled their shelf life, and now we need to repower them and reinstall them. So the opportunity is significant, and I think over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, the organisation's view will change of that.
Yeah, it does feel like a separate podcast, but for now, Cam, listen, great to see you again. Always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the pod, and we're going to see if we can track down some other panellists and get their reflections on the debate from today.
Thanks, Tim.
Nice one. Okay, so we're still in the breakout session now. People are enjoying a quick break from the session. We've just finished the panel discussion. Delighted to have tracked down Daniel Pillay. Daniel, you are chairman of BIPV Co. So your company is the manufacturer and supplier of this fabulous coating that we've been talking about a little bit this morning. The discussion in the panel was a broader discussion about solar power. What is the role of your technology in the solutions that everyone was talking about today for UK energy?
Okay, the main thing about our product and our technology is we are a solutions-driven company. We're not producing a product and just then trying to find a home for that particular product. Yeah. What we've designed is we've started from the very beginning and designed a product that is particularly suited for roofing and building applications. Yeah. So instead of the cart before the horse, we put the horse before the cart, and therefore that's how our offering is different from that of the conventional solar panel. Also, we've looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the solar panel that's out there in the market, and we've addressed as many of the weaknesses as possible while retaining the strengths. So ultimately, you end up with a product that is perfectly suited for the application.
Yeah, because it's already a decent-sized market. It's massively growing. There's some statistics that shocked me. I think you said on the panel, 50% of the nation's energy comes from within a building. And that is a massive opportunity to use renewables in that sector. There was also a discussion that 1.5 million homes currently have solar, which kind of sounded quite a lot to me. I thought it would have been less than that. But the ambition to grow that is huge. Your company and your technology, although you said you're technology agnostic, has a massive future in that potentially in the UK, doesn't it?
Yes. At the moment, the UK housing stock is about 30 million. Yeah. Of which 1.5 million have solar. So that still leaves 28.5 million which do not have a solar. And let's maybe say a third of them may not be suited for having solar for one reason or the other. Yeah. But there is a huge market out there that can be tapped into. But the other thing is, I'm a great believer in using the existing roofs to tap into the solar rather than use greenfield sites or valuable land sites. Yeah. It's a much better way of generating solar, and besides, most of the energy is consumed in the building, so cut out the transmission costs, cut out all the middlemen, generate it and consume it yourself, and that's the ideal way to do it as much as you can.
Yeah, of course, and you've talked there about the residential sector, but again in the room there was a debate about public procurement and the public sector, so schools, hospitals, public housing developments. Is that a different challenge for this technology?
Look, the drivers are different for different people. Yeah. So private developers who build a building and sell the building on don't really care much about the operating costs of the building, because that's someone else's cost. whereas public sector is owned and operated by the public sector, as our social landlords also do that. So for those people, those products which are the lifetime benefit is what they're looking at, offers a different product solution to those that are simply want to have the lowest cost and the highest price and not really care about the optics. So we have a different range of products. We have the CIGS based technology, which is aimed at those who care about the lifetime cost benefit. And we have a crystalline silicon solution, which is aimed at the design and build market, where perhaps CapEx is everything and OpEx is less so.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you briefly about the technology, because I asked someone earlier and I said, I've read about this CIGS technology, I don't really understand who's best to talk to, and they said, Daniel Pillow's your man, right? And so we've come to talk to you about it, because when we talk solar, people will traditionally think of those big black panels that sit on top of a roof. This is very different in a bonded solution. But then I also want to ask you had a discussion in the room with Dave Worsley, who we're going to try and track down later as well, who talked about a product called perovskite. This technology is constantly changing, isn't it, and developing. So firstly, I'd like you to explain what the CIGS technology is, and then maybe talk about the challenges of selling to consumers or developers a technology that may change in 5 years' time.
Good question. So CIGS is copper, indium, gallium, selenium. It's a chemical combination, which is basically evaporated then deposited on an aluminium foil, which is very flexible, which makes this product very flexible and very robust. So that was very much the technology that was projected to be leading the next generation. Our second generation, if you call crystalline silicon as generation 1, CIGS would have been generation 2, and perovskite would be generation 3. Right. Now, perovskite in generation 3 is not yet commercially ready. No. There are a number of challenges in terms of stabilizing it for the long term. Once that is done, then I think it will be ready, and we will no longer, at that point, adopt that technology as a good alternative to CIGS. So that's the background to the two different technologies.
And your current manufacturing facility is in Newport in South Wales, and that solution is going to soon be bonded onto the steel in North Wales, Shotton, so proper local supply chains.
It is. Look, in terms of the manufacturing of the solar module and the roof, very much along with the steel coming from Wales as well. But this is one of the frustrations I was exposing earlier, that we still have to buy lots of the little components in our module from around the world, from America, from Germany, even from China, some bits of it. So that's where I would like to see more of that come to the UK, so that we can jointly develop the next generation, maybe capitalize on the opportunity of perovskites rather than have to work with distant partners. Perhaps in the context of security, it's not that secure, and we need to be mindful of that.
One of the last things, I'm conscious you've got to go back in, but the last thing that struck me most about the panel discussion today was this genuine sense that the government and industry and academia are all in this together. They have a real sense of saying, we can see the potential benefits of this, and we're working, whether it's planning, whether it's connection with the grid, whether it's the technology, this real sense of almost a team. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think definitely now, I think there is a clear focus on renewable energy and its deployment. But given the fact that we had so many different energy ministers over the past number of years, says that there's not been continuity that was needed and the leadership that was needed. But I think people do realize that there are some constraints, physical constraints in terms of the grid, as well as the psychological and the legal framework to give the real freedom for people to be able to do the maximum that's possible. In terms of the technologies are there, the barriers are now no longer technological. PV is part of a bigger mix and wider mix, but it's still an important part of the mix. But what we need to do is take away those barriers and incentivize those that are reluctant to make it worth their while.
Listen, Daniel, I could talk to you all day about it, and we must come back and have another discussion. It's been really good to see you, and we'll catch you later. Thanks very much. So the next person I want to catch up with desperately is Tim Warham. Tim is from a senior policy advisor with the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. Most of the questions came Tim's way. If we could just move back into the light, Tim, for the podcast, that's okay. I was just saying to the camera then on the podcast, most of the questions were coming your way, and most of the focus of the discussion in that panel seemed to come your way because you're here from the UK government and clearly passionate about renewable energies. And I was rather struck, because you've clearly been in this for a little while now, and not just about solar, but I was rather struck by something quite personal you said. You said, it feels like my dreams are coming true one by one. Tell us what you meant by that.
Well, I suppose you have, when you're given responsibility for an area of work, you fairly quickly identify where the problems are, what is it that's stopping things from happening. And so I think it was during COVID that I started to write down a list of what my dreams were. And certainly in these past couple of years, I've been able to tick off a number of those on the list.
It's quite an extraordinary vision that the government has, and you as a policy advisor, I guess, are tasked with bringing to reality about, this clean energy 2030 target. You run the solar task force. You've got 1.5 million homes already with solar on them. You were saying you've got to target 90% of homes having solar on them. That's a stretch, isn't it?
Well, I think the 90% was focused particularly on new build homes, but nonetheless, we are also looking at retrofit of existing homes and seeing where we can unblock the barriers to that. We're already seeing a lot of innovation happening in the market. Just last year, 140,000 new solar installations in the domestic space. So we want to get behind that. We want to encourage that through the development of regulations, but also through the removal of barriers.
Yeah, because it's quite difficult to chunk this up into pieces, but arguably there's the house building piece, and you say the role of government in supporting renewable energy and house building is to ease the regulations, understand the planning constraints, understand the links with the grid and so forth we were talking about on the panel. The other side of it maybe is the public procurement side, which people have great expectations of the government say, listen, you're one of the largest purchasers or influencers into construction sector in the UK. What is it the government is doing or could do to allow products like Catnic SolarSeam we're here for today to be installed into public projects?
Yeah, and that's super important. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today, is that we're excited about this product. One of the things that's really important about it is being prefabricated rather than just being installed manually, because we know we've got a challenge in terms of the installer capacity, and therefore we're going to need to be having products which have much more built into them in the factory and then taken to site and installed relatively simply. Yeah. So yeah, it's a huge part of the solution.
Because the current government's going very big on economic growth, it's going very big on net zero, and it's going very big on delivery. Yeah. And I guess the question for you would be, if the UK government is saying, here's a new project for schools, here's a new project for infrastructure, here's a new social housing programme, how can you ensure that solar projects, products like Catnic SolarSeam, are actually used within those projects?
I think the main answer to that is in building regulations, not a glamorous part of the work, but nonetheless really important. So we're hoping to publish the Future Building Standard and the Future Home Standard imminently, and those will be important in assuring that the right amount of solar is going on to buildings.
Yeah, because there's clearly a desire in the room for local supply chains. UK made was big on Wales today, we noticed. Absolutely. Steel made in Wales, produced in Wales, the solar system made in Wales. But local sourcing seems obvious for UK sovereignty in an increasingly unstable world. The ability to make the products that we use within the UK is great. You said there's some limitations on how the government can insist that UK products are used for UK projects. Why is that?
Yeah, well, we're parties to the World Trade Organization, and so we conform to this sort of rules-based approach to trade. there are some things which are more efficiently made in other jurisdictions, and we are open to that, but while at the same time looking to encourage UK economic growth and additional UK content. So we're working across the board where we can support, and also areas where importing of products is the right thing to do.
Yeah, because I guess now, arguably, the government has a stake in the UK steel industry. Government has provided £500 million towards the decarbonisation of Port Talbot steelworks. You would think it's even more of an incentive for the government to say, we should be putting that steel, green steel, low CO2 steel, into projects in which we have an influence. Do you think that's landing?
I think it is landing, yes. And I think in the past we've seen criticisms from industry that they can't get the steel that they need for their applications. And so I think there's a whole culture change going on, and I think UK steel has a bright future.
Yeah, I guess the last thing, because I know you're a busy man, everyone wants to talk to you, but the last thing I want to talk to you about was, and I know Dave Worsley from Swansea University, former Swansea University, is going to talk about buildings as power stations, but this Catnic solar system is a system that allows energy to be generated within a domestic property. It seems to a lot of people that the opportunity for social housing here is massive, where you've got people who are in energy poverty, can live in a house which is, arguably paid for by the government, that will generate its own energy. Is that on your list of priorities?
Absolutely, and our ministers are very, very committed to doing bold moves in the social housing sector. And that's something that we're, again, expecting to make some announcements on shortly. And we're looking over the coming few years to make real progress on that area.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and then lastly, maybe just a reflection on the panel. And I was talking to Daniel Pillay about this in a few moments ago. The sense I got from that panel was that, in its truest sense, this is an example of government and industry and academia and technology suppliers having a single purpose and a common goal, and really a real desire to work together. It actually felt like a team of people up there rather than combatants, arguably. It feels like everyone's on the same page. Does it feel like that to you?
It definitely feels like that. And I think the work of the Solar Task Force, which will be publishing the solar roadmap shortly, I think emphasises that teamwork, the teamwork to make the dream work, as they might say.
Listen, thanks for joining us and taking time out today. Thanks for coming to the event and standing up and taking those questions. And let's hope that more of your dreams come true throughout the coming years.
Amen to that.
Great. Thanks for your time, Tim.
Cheers.
Thank you. Okay, so the session has just finished, so that's a wrap. And we just heard from a number of people. Daniel Pillay, who we interviewed earlier to talk about the specifics of voltaic coating. We heard from Dave Taylor from Tata Steel, talked about the decarbonisation journey that Tata Steel is going through and the advantages that will have for the construction centre, especially in terms of embedded carbon. Bridie Connolly talked about Catnic SolarSeam. And then to finish off the day, and I've just grabbed him away from his sandwich, Dave Worsley, Professor Dave Worsley, former Swansea University recently. Dave, unsurprisingly maybe, the title of your presentation was Buildings as Power Stations. It's a theme you've been banging on about for a number of years. Catnic SolarSeam must be heaven sent for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, the obviousness of using buildings to generate, store and release their own energy has been something that a number of us have been pushing for well more than a decade, since when we had hair and better musical choice. But now, this is the time to have a UK-made, Welsh-made solution, because it can be applied in so many ways where conventional solar cells can't. Yeah. So the lightweight nature of it, the fact that it works in the usual miserable British weather conditions, it'll give you something rather than nothing, and the fact that it actually looks all right, so it should be a way of solar making a breakthrough into retrofit, as well as being the product of choice for new build, because again, you've seen all the presentations and videos and things, you don't need an electrical engineering degree or indeed a high level of risk assessment to fit this roofing product. It just goes straight on.
Yeah, and of course you've got the active classroom and the active office in Swansea University, which use a lot of different technologies. And you talked in your presentation about the variety of technologies for renewable energies, that some of which were used in those active buildings. And really today is a development of few technologies coming together for Catnic SolarSeam, and we've seen some great examples that Bridie presented today. But also present today was the government. How important is their role, and how impressed were you with what Tim Warham had to say about the Solar Task Force and the potential of that to drive forward technologies?
I think Tim's excitement and enthusiastic embracing of what the potential for solar is refreshing to me as someone who's been banging on about solar energy since I was basically 20. And the government input is absolutely critical, because it's only through changes in regulatory processes and in building standards and in how we specify the buildings that government pays for. The government on its own real estate has massive influence on construction, and if we don't change the rules, the construction industry will continue to give us the kind of let's say product. I won't use bad words because I don't want it to go out on the internet, but the same product we've always had, but at an increasing cost and an increasingly lower quality. And the opportunity for things like manufactured buildings, particularly using green steel, are just enormous, because you can bring automotive quality to construction. And when you consider that a room in an office probably costs as much as a high-end BMW or Range Rover, and yet a room in an office has got a couple of power sockets and a window, there's a lot you should imagine should come out in cost of construction through adopting manufactured routes. And if those buildings are all self-powered and they're storing their energy sensibly and sharing it when it's needed, it means there's more grid electricity available for people like Tata Steel to use for transforming industry, because that's with the best will in the world, the steel plant is not going to be powered by a couple of solar powered sheds.
No, that's right.
So the grid energy can be focused into where it's really needed, as opposed to spent charging my car.
Yeah, and there was lots of good examples talked about today, wasn't there? But you talk, you've been looking at this for 20 years, your active buildings have been, say, 10 years. Are you worried about the inertia being overcome, and do you see some potential for this thing to finally get some traction? Because they were talking earlier about 1.5 million houses in the UK feature solar now, but there's a lot more to go, and is it actually going to take root?
I am concerned about traction and speed, and I think I'm also concerned that, media coverage if you look at the media coverage of electric cars, right? Every day there's a picture on my news feed of something burning, usually a petrol or diesel car, and then the feedback is all, electric is rubbish. And obviously we shouldn't underestimate the power for which that conventional industry has over media control. And what we have to do through your agency and that of others in the area is explain to people that their life can be made wholly better by embracing renewables. And not only is it going to be better for the environment, for them it's going to be better individually as well, and they're going to have more money in their pocket to spend on the things they want, as opposed to on the things they have to have, which is energy.
And I remember coming to your active building and being staggered that it was disconnected from the grid. You had plugged your car in to run to power your car off the building, and you said to me, and if the building runs out of energy, we can boil the kettle off the car, which I thought was just, whether it's true or not, but it's staggering. But
well, it is a way, if you think about what we're moving towards, we will all ultimately, in spite of the efforts of some people, be driving around using something which is basically the size, a battery size of about 5 houses requirement. And the fact that can share power with the house, it means that we shouldn't ever have a power cut, and we shouldn't ever run out of power, and we shouldn't ever have to worry that the price of grid energy has gone too high. Because if your car's full up and you want a cup of tea, you plug the car into the house and take some of the electrons that you brought home with you.
Yeah, and of course a lot of people today mentioned the opportunity for social housing and taking people out of energy poverty. And there's a few schemes have started to use products similar to the Catnic SolarSeam product for social housing. I mean, that's got to be a massive opportunity for the UK, isn't it?
Social housing, I think, is potentially the thing that can unlock the success of this kind of product, because it can be specified by local authorities and government, because most social housing is covered by some level of grant aid, and because the social value of providing people with energy, which they then don't have to worry about, is just incalculably huge. Imagine where people are at the moment. They have to choose between turning the heating on and heating water and having a bath, or buying a loaf of bread. We shouldn't have people in that position. And for the economy overall, if they're able to spend what limited resources they've got on other things other than energy, for the total economy, that's really good news. For the corner shop, it's good news. For the person that makes clothing, whatever, everybody's a winner at that point. And for those people that are in that position, it will show them the value of what money that they've got. Because actually they'll be able to get things they want as opposed to having to pay for the things that they have to have. And that, I would imagine, would be a motivator for most of them to think about ways and means of, gaining more, and provide a mechanism out of poverty for a lot of people who are trapped in it at the moment.
I'm very conscious I took you away from your lunch. But one last thing I want to say, I said at the beginning, former Swansea University, because you finished there, you retired from Swansea University. What's next for Dave Worsley?
Well, I am emeritus at Swansea, which means I can work there for free, which, is great. But my mission is to try and get this sort of social change movement active. We've talked about active buildings, we've talked about solar power, we've talked about use of steel. We've got to stop talking about it and actually do it. And I think as an external entity, an agent, actor, whatever you want to call it, from the university, my aim is to be heavily involved in driving that agenda for social change and economic growth.
And South Wales is probably as good a place as any to have a look at that.
It is the place. I mean, the Port Talbot transformation is going to make basically Europe's largest upcycling facility. And if that's powered by renewable power, and it's making renewably powered houses, and it's making electric cars, and it's making recyclable packaging that we can use forever. Oh man, that is a new industrial revolution.
It is,
which our grandchildren can be truly proud of, and they can all have jobs in it.
Dave, pleasure as always to see you. All the best for whatever comes next, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Tata Steel and to Catnic and BIPV Co.
Thanks very much indeed. Cheers, Dave. So I think the last person I want to talk to is the lady who's set up this event, run the event, and presented the benefits of Catnic SolarSeam at the event, and she is Bridie Connolly. We spoke to her down in Pembrokeshire in West Wales about the develop there, and I'm just going to see if I can interrupt her now. Bridie, hi. If I could just capture you for a couple of minutes. Firstly, congratulations on the event. You were responsible for setting it up, running it, making sure it all ran smoothly. Great list of panellists there, great speakers. Real thought leadership event, I thought. How pleased were you with how it went?
Super pleased. I think we brought a range of people into a room today, some with a background in solar and renewables, and some in steel and construction. And I think it was great to just bring all them people into one place to have really meaningful discussions and really be that intersection between creating a solar product that's bonded to a steel panel.
Yeah, and when I spoke to Dave Hanson at the beginning of the day, Managing Director of Catnic, and I was saying, well, why are you in London? He was saying, well, this is kind of where the specifiers and architects are. Has there been a good turnout from that audience?
It has, yeah. I think the original purpose of this event really come from growing the specification of this product and making people aware that it is available in the market. As we mentioned in the day, we always see a lot of the monocrystalline and silicone panels on roofs, but we don't see a lot of this. And London really is the space to grow these things. It's the centre of innovation, and we're in the building centre today where we see so many new products. I think we've really captured the right group today.
Yeah, it's a fantastic venue, and the more time you spend in it, the more stuff you see. And as you said, it's in terms of construction innovation, this has probably got to be as good a place as any. And the opportunity to actually put a piece of your roofing system in the networking area is fantastic. The other thing I just wanted to briefly talk to you about is, I guess it fell to you to stand up and sell the product, didn't it? The Catnic SolarSeam. I've just been talking to Dave Worsley about the active office and the active classroom, and this is really a development of some of those technologies that have been building for a number of years. What's your feelings about the product you're trying to sell?
It makes it easy to sell something you believe in. And this product isn't new. BIPV and that solar laminate has been going a long time, and as has our steel panel. And I think combining these two products together, I think it's been a slow burner, and it's been going, as we know from the case study, quite a few years. But now we've really been able to invest the time, energy, resource, testing, put guarantees behind it, which makes it a commercial product.
Yeah, the guarantees is something we've not talked about, and it's probably a detail we can't go into in the podcast, but it's an important part of the offering. It's always been an important part of Colour Coat's offering, and now with this combined technology with BIPV Co, the investment of the kit in Shotton to bond that PV coating with your SolarSeam will be another important step forward, because a lot of people talk today about local supply chains. How much of a difference will that make, do you think?
I think it's huge, and I also think it shows that our commitment as a company to making this product as good as it can be. I think Tata have backed it by commissioning an entire bonding line in Shotton, which isn't a cheap investment, and I think it really shows that we are trying to deliver a sustainable product into the market, but we are also determined to make it as sustainable as possible in getting there. So hence the fact that the panel, the solar, is all manufactured in Wales, and now we're keeping that at home. We're really keeping it into this little bubble of Welsh pride, I suppose.
Yeah, listen, fantastic presentation about Catnic SolarSeam. I don't know if we've managed to capture it and whether we can share it on the website, but I hope we can, because I think you covered all of those issues very thoroughly, and if there's specifiers and architects and people from government and public procurement who are interested in it, they should watch that, and I'm sure they'll be sold. But for now, listen, Bridie, I'll let you have some lunch and take a well-deserved break. Thanks very much. So there we have it, the Catnic SolarSeam product launch here in London at the Building Centre. It's been a massive success. We've had speakers all morning from academia, from government, from Tata Steel, and from the construction industry. The sell around solar power is very difficult to deny. The arguments are quite overwhelming in favour of it. There's some inertia that's been maybe holding it back over recent years, and some of that inertia is around planning, some of it's about perception. Dave Worsley talked about some of the negative messaging in the media about renewable energy. But if you look at the people here today and you look at what they were saying, people from government, people from universities, people from the steel industry, people from the construction industry, there's a definite common purpose for the benefit of society, for the benefit of industrial supply chains, and for the benefit of the sovereignty of the UK, to develop solar solutions that can bring people out of energy poverty, that can make our industry more competitive. And the steel substrate for this photovoltaic coating, combined with the BIPV Co technology, it is second generation, potentially third generation going to perovskite in the future. It ticks all the boxes. It ticks the aesthetics, it ticks the construction methods boxes, the combination of green steel with the coating. We've got an example, a homeowner here telling us how good the product is, how easy it was to install, the benefits he's had in his pocket and to the environment. It is quite an overwhelming story, and the collaboration through the Solar Task Force, which again Cam Rajput talked about, Tim Warren talked about, it only looks positive going forward. It just feels like it just needs that bit more momentum to really get some traction, and this could be evolutionary or revolutionary for steel in the UK, PV in the UK, energy in the UK, and for UK society. So we'll follow this story closely over the coming years and see how it develops, and hopefully on the back of green steel it'll be a proper winner.